Okay, it is a big broadcast, obviously. The world just gets crazier by the minute. In the second hour, I will open the phones up for the families of veterans who have committed suicide. It's 22 a day and growing. It's growing every month, unfortunately. And we're going to look at why this phenomenon is exploding to epic and pandemic proportions. Because the establishment wants to only focus on violence when they can get some power out of it and use the crisis to take basic liberties. They want it swept under the rug, dealing with not just suicide of the troops, but will you guys print me suicide now #1 cause of unnatural death in the U.S.? Print me that in the 22 a day dead. Thank you, because I'll need that in the second hour. I forgot to have those exhibits for people. For the TV viewers and radio listeners, we are streaming video at InfoWarsNews.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. Okay, where to start today? Let me just go over the headlines. In fact, I intended to come in today to talk about the police state, drones, expanded war in the Middle East, Israel strike in Syria, maybe first in a series, Washington Post. But last night and this morning, I watched several times a video that Paul Watson's posting right now at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. World banker makes stunning confession. And it's James Wolfensohn, but it has a couple clips off financial channels, TV as well. Something he said 2 years ago that we covered at the time, but I was reminded of it, where they talked about how most of the West is going to be poor in the next decade and how the middle class is going to disappear. And he was telling top PhD students this here in the United States. What was it? Stanford Research Institute. Which is about as high level as it gets in actual technocratic training. And I just wanted to point out that this is all an engineered program on record. And I'm going to write an article tomorrow. I'll have to write it tonight with Paul Watson, and then he'll finish it up in the morning. That's going to be published at Infowars.com, if not tomorrow, Tuesday. But if I procrastinate, it will never get done. Just showing where the globalists admit this is by design. Because this doesn't have to happen. And I saw that video, and it reminded me, I did some more research last night, and sure enough, I go to drudgereport.com probably 15 times a day, like I do Infowars.com, and I realize it's about the two sites now. I got a Wired some too, and a couple of others, CNET. And I saw these headlines out of Bloomberg. China eclipses U.S.'s biggest trading nation measured in goods. And then I saw this other one, Fed holdings of U.S. Government debt hit 1.696691 trillion, up 257% under Obama. And I thought I would break this down today. I was already planning it, and I'm glad that Drudge is concerned about it because this is not a big enough issue out there. I mean, it's not even on the radar screen for most people. How did we even allow the communist dictatorial Chinese to own our debt? And what is this part of in the future? And again, it's really not our debt. Most of it is derivatives we've signed on to. So I'm going to be breaking down this fact again in more detail today, because being aware of this is what is going to allow ourselves to extricate ourselves from this engineered system. The globalists have decided to transfer everything to India and China and the third world. And it's not going to benefit their people either. They've decided to impoverish us as a tool of political control. I love to open the broadcast, especially on the Sunday transmission, with the words of Thomas Jefferson. It's like dumping an ocean of holy water on Count Dracula. It is, to the order of 10, the equivalent of drawing your fingernails across a chalkboard for authoritarian control freak sycophants worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for joining us on this Sunday, February 10th, 2013, global transmission. We have a very important broadcast lined up for you yet again today. For all of our AM and FM affiliates across the United States and people listening to the internet streams at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, as well as viewers at InfoWarsNews.com Thank you so much for tuning in today. All right, let me just do this. Let me just try to just go over some headlines for you and then dive in to the top stories that are military, economic, and authoritarian in nature, dealing with domestic drones, Pentagon drones being used now in the manhunt for the reported rampaging former cop who's shooting people. And then the police keep shooting vehicles that aren't even the same color or make and model. They've now attacked and shot up. They're saying a second, but from my reading, it's the third vehicle that looks nothing like it. I mean, you could be driving a unicycle and they'd go crazy. What is behind this hysteria? The wicked flee when none pursue. I think it's a Bible verse. I'm not saying the LAPD are all wicked, but this is a hysterical activity. Coming up, huge asteroid will miss by 15 minutes. That's what NASA says, using a timing of the fact that it was at its speed of 17,000 miles an hour. That's about 15 minutes away from the Earth, or inside the main belt of satellites. But the asteroid is also 17,000 miles away when it passes, not just moving that fast. So NASA says everything's going to be absolutely A-OK. And I tend to believe them, because if a real asteroid was going to be hitting us, they wouldn't be telling us about it, I can assure you. But they say in the 100 years or so they've been tracking asteroids with telescopes and radio systems. This is the closest one has ever passed, and it would be hundreds of thousands of megatons, the equivalent of hydrogen bombs going off if it was to actually hit the planet Earth. Okay, so that story is obviously important, but we'll cover it more a little bit later in the transmission. The storm that has hit the Northeast has killed reportedly 10 people and left millions without power and stranded 700,000 individuals. And my only question is this: why is FEMA again putting up signs outside their offices saying closed for the storm? I thought they're the people that are going to protect us. Winter storm buries Northeast, leaves 10 dead, 700,000 powerless. I also was reading stranded. New Englanders are digging out 3 feet of snow, now it's up to 4 feet, and stranded motorists were still being reached by emergency crews early Sunday. And for one of the biggest blizzards in a generation, left at least 10 people dead and over 700,000 electricity across the Northeast. Of course, the answer to Nemo, the storm, is to pay Al Gore more money, because every time there's bad weather, hot or cold, Al Gore says pay carbon credits on all carbon dioxide that plants breathe, and this bad weather will stop. There's always bad weather somewhere in the world. There's tens of thousands of microclimates in the planet. But that's just some of the news on that front. Israel is saying they may strike Syria on a routine basis now. And again, I'm not an enemy of Israel. But at the same time, Assad didn't attack anybody. He's been pretty mainline the last decade since his dad died. And our government and NATO are putting Al-Qaeda in Libya and Syria to take over those countries, and they're engaged in ethnic cleansing of Christians and Muslim minorities, and it's all on record. And you turn on CNN, it's like the valiant freedom fighters move towards Damascus, and on and on. While they're the ones attacking, and they're the ones committing the atrocities. This is not some internal operation to overthrow the Assad regime. The interests that have hijacked our country, the people that have conquered us through financial fraud, I'm going to get to that in a moment, are the ones using Al-Qaeda to take over Libya and Syria, and it's totally immoral. It's a preemptive invasion, and some say, oh, come on, Alex, let's get rid of Arab dictators. What, get rid of Mubarak and then put the Muslim Brotherhood in, who are now running around sexually mutilating women and everything else? I mean, put something 10 times worse in? In fact, how about 100 times worse? Because the Muslim Brotherhood is just fronting for the Saudi Arabia and the jihadis, and now put actual Al-Qaeda in Libya and Syria, and they're beheading Christians, and that's in the foreign news, but not on the news here. I mean, it's Twilight Zone. And then if I fly, the TSA wants to grab my genitals because Al-Qaeda might be hiding in my Calvin Klein underwear, or might be hiding in my Fruit of the Loom underwear, while the government runs Al-Qaeda. I mean, listen, I'm done, okay? I'm done. Here's the Washington Post. Israeli strike in Syria might be first in series. And they just say, oh, we've taken 4 or 5 miles in of buffer zone. They already took some of that back in the 60s. And why not just take the whole country as a buffer zone? And they say because of Al-Qaeda. You've got to love the fact that Israel, NATO, the United States, that is the interest running these countries. The people are all pretty much the same. They just want a good future for their children. Whether you're Syrian, Israeli, American, French, pretty much humans are humans. People are people. But just the bizarreness that they're doing this and the media is not even making a big issue out of it. Even though we know it's controlled media, this is bizarre. I mean, this would be like saying Superman is Lex Luthor. You'd go, no, he's not. Superman's the enemy of Lex Luthor. It's that dumbed down and bizarro, to use another term out of comic books, that this is going on, that it doesn't even compute for me. I mean, that's how stupid the system thinks you are. The propaganda is targeted at about a 3rd grade level, literally. The bad man wear turban. We take your rights and set up checkpoint for bad man in turban. I'm like, well, Anwar al-Awlaki, CIA, it's been leaked and confirmed that he hangs out at the Pentagon and got orders. No, he's bad man in turban. No, he works for you. What, you say America, Al-Qaeda? No, criminal elements that have hijacked America are using Al-Qaeda to take over whoever they want and to menace us so the system can play the part of the good cop and take our rights. You understand that? The foreign banks are the good cop. The bad cop is Al-Qaeda. It's very elementary. It's very elementary. Senator Palpatine hires mercenaries to attack his own planet to become dictator. That's Star Wars, Episode 3. 5-year-olds can figure it out. Can adults figure it out? Can you figure it out? Can you figure it out? Can you figure it out? That is the $64 trillion question. All right, when we come back here, that's just some of the news. DHS, watchdog, OKs, suspicionless seizures of electronic devices along border. And the problem is they grab U.S. citizens' computers and sometimes just don't give them back when you fly in. And then the last time before they got stopped, they were doing it to anybody that flew. They just take your laptop and download the contents without a warrant. Police are now doing this with your cell phones, saying it's not part of your person, papers, or effects. Really, Fourth Amendment, person, papers, or effects. My iPhone is not my effects. And then we've got another one even bigger here. CISPA back, hacking, online espionage, resurrect cybersecurity bill, which even CNET News, that CBS says, is Russian or Chinese-style internet censorship. So all of that is coming up. But first, when we come back, the top stories. We have been maneuvered by design to be debtors to the communist Chinese. And the globalists are on record saying they're going to impoverish Americans, but also Westerners, as a tool of political control. And I'm going to tie that into the police state. Christopher Dorner, the first U.S. Homeland drone strike victim, current TV saying that, the Al Jazeera and Al Gore run system. And we've got it also out of Reuters, but it's not true because, look at this, meet the North Dakota family of anti-government separatists busted by cops using a Predator drone. That was 2 years ago. They're using drones all the time. The military-industrial complex that Dwight D. Eisenhower warned us about, but I guess he's with Al-Qaeda. ProPure is introducing Pro One. All of your filtration in one system, portable, on the go. This is the Pro One by ProPure. You wanted it, you got it. No more do you have 2 or 3 filters to just reduce sodium fluoride. You have a system that cuts out the sodium fluoride and up to 95% of hydrofluorosilicic acid. Advanced manufacturing technology combines silver-impregnated white ceramic with new Aquamedics advanced media for removal of fluoride and other heavy metals, all in one filter element. It cuts out the acid derivative of fluoride. It is the only one that does it, and out of the gates, we have it discounted at 10% off with promo code WATER. This is the only system that in one unit helps reduce or remove pesticides, herbicides, chloramines, ammonia, and chlorine, hydrofluorosilicic acid, the most common form of fluoride not covered by other fluoride filter brands, and sodium hexafluorosilicate. This is a revolution against the tyrants. They love putting the toxic acid base of fluoride into your water. They love the fact that it's an adjuvant supercharging the trace Prozac in the water and the hormones and the other chemicals. By cutting out fluoride, you cut out the turbocharger in all the poison being artificially introduced into your body. This is what I use. It's a win-win. You get a high-quality product at the lowest price. You support the InfoWar. Get your Pro Pure with the new Pro One filters today at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139. Okay, where to start here? In the second hour, I'm going to open the phones up specifically for the families and those that have been victimized by the epidemic of suicides by active duty, but also of veterans, now 22 a day as of just a few weeks ago. And the mainstream media doesn't want to focus on this. The system, the establishment, just wants to wrap itself in the heroism of the men and women of the armed services and their missions and get reflected glory from it and then speak for them while stealing their pension funds, while using them for guinea pigs in medical experiments. The list goes on and on. We're going to really talk about this in the second hour on the Sunday transmission and humanize these folks. You can hear them call in, hear their names. I mean, I myself could go pull up local news articles all over the place. I mean, I know people who've got family in the military who've committed suicide. I know you know people. I mean, it's 22 a day. It's over 10,000 just the last few years. It dwarfs combat-related fatalities. And so you're going to hear all this hype about 20 dead children at Sandy Hook and we need to turn our guns in, or you're going to hear we got to shut down all of Southern California and have a total police state forever because one individual allegedly goes crazy and kills 3 police. But you're not going to hear the media get all hysterical and chew their fingernails and hide under the table over 22 servicemen and women committing suicide every single day. So we're going to be hearing from callers. I mean, I could easily get family members of folks that have died here in studio, but instead we'll just hear from you, specifically if you've lost family, direct family, close relation. And we don't screen calls here, but occasionally I give out the number and say, only on this topic. And so it is only on that topic when I give the number out at the end of the hour coming up here in about 37 minutes from now. So stand by for that. We want to get your take on the situation and why you think it's happening. I mean, I know why it's happening. It's a cocktail of reasons, but too many tours, psychotropic drugs, experimental drug programs, and coming home and there's not being jobs. And a lot of people are scared of vets, and they shouldn't be, because statistically, they're not any more violent than anybody else. In fact, some of the best workers out there in my experience. But you got a lot of people that don't like veterans. And you got Homeland Security saying they're the #1 terror threat. Well, I guess if you're afraid of Americans taking the country back ever, I guess the British government listed former veterans of the Redcoats and former veterans of the French and Indian War to be rounded up and have their guns turned in 1775. This isn't the first time corrupt empires have tried to disarm the veterans. After the Tsars fell, the Soviets did it. Well, before they became the Soviet Empire, the communists did it. The Bolsheviks did it. I don't want to digress into a history lesson. I'm going to get to that in the next segment on why we've been maneuvered by the globalist to be absolutely bankrupted by design. And I want to break down how that ties into Agenda 21. China eclipses U.S. as biggest trading nation measured in goods, Bloomberg, and we'll get into what the Federal Reserve's up to. Now that's the real Rubicon right there. As of 2012 numbers, they've now come out a month and a half later, as they always do. The only reason the U.S. is still a bigger GDP than China is the fiat money, the Federal Reserve notes. And they're rapidly devaluing those because here in this article, Fed's holdings of U.S. government debt, notice it says Feds, that's the private Federal Reserve, but they're backed up by the Treasury. So they want to buy it because the U.S. taxpayer has to back it up. They buy it with fiat zeros and ones. Federal Reserve just puts it on a balance sheet. They buy our debt and then sell it to the communist Chinese and others or hold it. And then we, in turn, the American people, have to pay it back to the Fed, which is the private Federal Reserve set up by Standard Oil and others in 1913. It's just a giant. We can't just arrest these people like Bernie Madoff and Ken Lay. I mean, it can all end real quick. Sure, it takes some triaging debt, writing it off. They're already writing off this debt, by the way, their fake debt. They just use it as a black hole to shove our money into to get us more into debt. Because, again, when you're involved in fiat, the only reason it's valuable is getting us to accept it and believe it's our debt to then get real assets. And it's not just getting the real assets. It's being able to selectively enforce and shut down your competition. You know, just 30 years ago, if you study the history of it, when Republicans got in office, they would audit all the Democrats. That is, Democrats in federal government. They would harass them. When Democrats got in, they would do the same thing. And the kibosh kind of got put on that with Nixon, so I guess about 38 years ago or so. He got in trouble for that. Now, the parties don't do it to each other so much because they're all one big criminal gang at the top, at the committee chairman level. They do it to the American people, and they do it to former CIA, FBI folks that haven't towed the line. And the word's out there, keep your mouth shut or we'll come take everything you got. I mean, it's just such intimidation. They're arresting whistleblowers that expose torture and putting them in jail for 30 months. I mean, you know, the CIA guy last week just got convicted. I mean, this is... When liberty and freedom fails, the best men rot in filthy jails, and those that cried, appease, appease, are hung by those they tried to please. I mean, there's no doubt that you know what a red and silver 57 Chevy looks like. You know what a 69 Corvette looks like, don't you? You know what an elephant looks like. This looks like a big, nasty, stinking, dangerous, horrible, aggressive, malignant, super cancer tyranny. Super cancer tyranny. Government gone absolutely crazy, haywire, power trip. From every level, unaccountable. More and more. The only areas of the country still growing, still prospering, despite the depression, are areas that were behind the curve on big government, like Texas. But we're still an incredible third world police state compared to many other areas in our past. It's just that we're a part of the body, you know, a group of organs that don't have all the deadly cancer completely yet. You know, we're not going into organ failure yet. So everybody's like running here as a lifeboat. It's being swamped. And the globalist goal is to swamp us, is to sink us. I'm going to explain that in the next segment. In fact, I said in the next segment, I'm already into the next segment and haven't gotten to my next big piece of news. When we come back, I'll get into Christopher Dorner. And again, the story's overblown and hyped, but in the story, you can educate and inform people about how the world really works. So it is a treasure trove, despite the fact that it's a tragedy, to understand the mind of megalomania and delusional fruitcakeism. I mean, the gleam in this guy's eyes, the pride. You can look at his manifesto, all of it. This is real. This isn't one of their staged events. It illustrates the spirit infecting government. We'll be right back. ProPure is introducing Pro One. All of your filtration in one system, portable, on the go. This is the Pro One by ProPure. You wanted it, you got it. No more do you have 2 or 3 filters to just reduce sodium fluoride. You have a system that cuts out the sodium fluoride and up to 95% of hydrofluorosilicic acid. Advanced manufacturing technology combines silver-impregnated white ceramic with new Aquamedics advanced media for removal of fluoride and other heavy metals, all in one filter element. It cuts out the acid derivative of fluoride. It is the only one that does it, and out of the gates, We have it discounted at 10% off with promo code WATER. This is the only system that in one unit helps reduce or remove pesticides, herbicides, chloramines, ammonia, and chlorine, hydrofluorosilicic acid, the most common form of fluoride not covered by other fluoride filter brands, and sodium hexafluorosilicate. This is a revolution against the tyrants. They love putting the toxic acid base of fluoride into your water. They love the fact that it's an adjuvant supercharging the trace Prozac in the water and the hormones and the other chemicals. By cutting out fluoride, you cut out the turbocharger in all the poison being artificially introduced into your body. This is what I use. It's a win-win. You get a high-quality product at the lowest price. You support the InfoWar. Get your Pro Pure with the new Pro 1 filters today at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139. The news websites are InfoWars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And the site where we have the nightly news, weeknights, 7 o'clock. We also stream video of the weekday radio show. And, of course, the Sunday 4 to 6 special transmission are all streamed at InfoWars News. That's one word, InfoWarsNews.com. That will take you over to PrisonPlanet.tv. Okay, where to begin on this subject of Christopher Dorner? I covered some of this on Friday, the MO. When does something have the telltale signs of being staged? When doesn't it? When the media seizes on something instantly with a scripted focus of talking points, they are using a crisis to take liberties, or they allowed it to happen or are involved. And there have been cases of all of those permutations on record of staged events or provocateur events throughout history, not just with our government, but countless other governments. I've read the manifesto, the two manifestos, and it fits into the narcissistic kind of mental illness of someone who's kicked out of the party. You know, oh, special ops, anti-terror, training, and then assigned, a guy that's going to be Jack Bauer, 24. And then he's assigned to the LAPD and all the corruption he sees. And he says that, you know, he sees racism. And so now the media is like, maybe it is racism. We're going to reopen his firing case in 2007, 2008. And, you know, all of this tells you that it's a real event. Now, regardless of all of this, they could certainly piggyback other things on it to kind of use this down the road to save this crisis, to put it in that political piggy bank to use the Capitol later. California has introduced legislation that makes people turn in all their semi-automatics. That's going to cause even faster exodus from California, which is exactly what the globalists want. They want it to implode so they can consolidate power. But regardless, you've had now several vehicles shot up. One case wasn't even a truck. And another case was the wrong make and model, wrong color. The guy had a silver truck. It's a blue truck with women in it. And there's no apologies. It's just we're scared. And the image of tens of thousands of police up in the snow-capped mountains of California running around in giant armored combat gear that they can hardly walk in, it's ridiculous. Police officers are supposed to be investigators. They're supposed to be community service. They're supposed to be peacemakers. They're supposed to be peace officers. But see, they've militarized police and made them part of Homeland Security, and military goes and kills people and breaks things. And so that's the military we have here domestically now. And you're going to have some of their people go haywire because they've been educated and trained and prepped and prepared. I mean, if you trained a pit bull all day to go out and attack people, don't be surprised when it goes out and attacks people. You're like, yeah, but they're supposed to target terrorists or they're supposed to target bad guys. Well, what if the system is the bad guys? It's going to turn inward on itself. And the larger issue in all of this is You've got one guy that's killed 3 people and shot 2 others, allegedly, reportedly. And you've got the police, because I've watched it on the news, you've watched it, the photos, the combat gear, the beat cops walking around with sound suppression silencers on 308s, Reapers, M4, M16s, you name it. And the cops literally are acting like they could die any minute. I mean, I go do speaking engagements and don't have any security there to check anybody, and I walk out and talk to 2,000 people, and I'm not even scared. I just walk out there. Something's going to happen. It's going to happen. Just like I drove here today. The most dangerous thing you can do is drive. And I don't know, shaking and scared the whole time. I try to drive defensively, but it just shows the cultural mind control. Because I've watched a lot of this, and I've watched local news feeds, and these aren't cops that know they're being videotaped out of store windows by the local news. I mean, the cops are running around in a giant drama queen, pity party. We have become a nation of drama queens, not just the police. And not all police departments are like this. And I know some LAPD people as well, and they never acted like this. I mean, this is drama queen central. And the globalist plan on record now to have a civil war that they instigate and start in this country by targeting gun owners, harassing gun owners. When gun owners start fighting back, start resisting, they're going to be called terrorists. And a lot of people are going to say, okay, I'm a terrorist. I'm going to start going out there and going after people. And I've always made this point. We don't want to go there. That's the last place we want to be. See, I'm not a guy dressed up in a bunch of Darth Vader gear trying to act tough and standing there on a street corner trying to scare little kids. You understand? I've really studied history. I know what a real war will be. I know the globalists want it because they win either way, because it's going to destroy our economy and destroy our culture. But the entire preparation isn't to fight Al-Qaeda now. In the training manuals, the TV shows, the dramas on TV to get the public ready for it, like I Hate Paul Revere and Founding Fathers, that the new Al-Qaeda is gun-owning conservatives. That's the new West Point reports, 2 different ones saying the Tea Party's going to join Al-Qaeda. And you know that's ridiculous. They don't care. Maybe 10% of the public's Tea Party, they're going to tell the 90% that we're Al-Qaeda. West Point now teaches that. The Army War College now teaches that. They have TV shows because it's not real, like Founding Fathers, where the militia leader is really Al-Qaeda, but the militia doesn't know. You're like, but that's just ridiculous. I mean, the Tea Party would never, it doesn't matter. It's on TV. And you've got a bunch of people like these cops in L.A. who statistically, more of them are going to die this week in car wrecks, and more citizens are going to die with scared cops shooting them. They pulled a guy over, and he was white, in a car, not a truck, and they shot him. They said, okay, you can go, and then as he drove off, they shot him. They shot up his vehicle. Just craziness. Just absolute mania, because they're trained and they watch these cop shows and terror shows all day that Al-Qaeda is hiding under every chair and right-wingers are hiding everywhere. You're going to go out now and start fights with people. You know, I've talked about how I get sick of bike riders on the hike and bike trail. When there's a 10-foot wide trail, they'll come over in your area and say, get out of their way. Most of them are very nice. But I was out hiking while I was running up a hill with my buddy the other day, Richard. I'm going to tell the story to, bring it all together to admit I do this too. And these bike riders come down the big 15-foot wide hill, and they're on their side, I'm on mine. And the guys kind of get a little bit close to me, and one guy goes, hey, get out of the way, Alex. And I turned around to the guy, and I said, what did you say? And he goes, I'm talking to this guy. And Richard goes, yeah, no, he was saying, get out of my way or get off the brakes. I'd missed that part. The guy's named Alex up there. It's like David or John. But here I am. I'm not taking crap off anybody. Okay, and that wasn't intended for me, and I wasn't looking for a fight. I just can't help it. I turned around and said, what'd you say to me? And I just got to learn to not go off half-cocked. Well, it's the same system. The police are out there just looking for terrorists everywhere. And you're going to make the people that, pushing us around, getting in our face. And look, the military and the Pentagon knows this. When they're actually trying to take over an area, they kiss everyone's butt, treat them with great respect, give them all sorts of cash, free stuff. because you want the hearts and minds. When you look at what the globalists are doing, and it's not just me looking at what they're doing, I've got all their white papers and reports, they say they're going to start a civil war in America where the right wing and libertarians have a shooting war with the police. Then they'll bring in the UN, the communists, and I4 after we've all killed each other. I've got an idea. Let's not play this game. How's that sound? Let's figure out the scam. Let's figure out how this really works, and let's go around it. We're going to start talking to the family members of servicemen and women that have committed suicide, a unprecedented epidemic, 7 times what it was at the end of the Vietnam era, the previous record for suicides. I want to focus in on this and humanize these heroes the media wants to ignore. They want to use their heroics to try to sell the globalist tyranny agenda, but actually dehumanize the individual. So here's the toll-free number. I know it's hard to talk about, but we'd like to hear from you. The toll-free number to join us is 877-789-ALEX. That's 877-789-2539. We have a different number here on the Sunday show than the weekday show because Genesis takes our calls and routes them through. On the weekday show, we're doing it all produced here in-house in Austin, Texas on Sundays, 4 to 6 p.m. Central. 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. And we'd like to hear you talk about what happened and why you think it happened in the next hour. Okay, so that said, you've got the slow militarization of police. It actually started with Daryl Gates and the CIA, that's been declassified, wanting to militarize police back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It started in L.A. as the model. They had shows like SWAT, and pretty soon every department wanted to be paramilitary. And the military trains to kill people and break things and fight an enemy. So if you have a domestic military, who do they fight? Well, us, the enemy. And the mainline Army and Marines have resisted this mission because they constitutionally have had it handed down that that's illegal. The country started over troops on the streets and gun confiscation in 1776. So what they're doing is just finding cops that'll do it. And a lot of these guys that are really true soldiers and are tough, you know, the tougher somebody is, the meaner somebody is, the nicer they are, and the more they're not looking for trouble. And the more their also intelligence tends to go with the package. And so your real warriors don't want to go around dominating men, women, and children. So they find the swollen, roid head, tough guy. They'll always have that gleam in their eye, that big smile. They think they're rock stars. This is a bunch of dress-up time, like 3-year-old girls dressing up like princesses or boys dressing up like Spider-Man. You know, and that's fine when you're 5 years old or 3 years old. You're supposed to give that up when you get older. And I see so many of these cops that get in your face or start fights with people. You've seen the videos online where somebody's done nothing wrong and they attack them. Or there's a story up at drudgereport.com on the right-hand side, down towards the bottom now. That's an Infowars.com report where before this thing in California started, what is it, San Bernardino, these people are out there mile off the road in the mountains hiking, and a police helicopter flies around in circles and lands and is like, why are you videotaping me? I'm going to search you without a warrant. Turned out they had no reason. It was just pure harassment. And that town and county is going bankrupt, but they've got a whole bunch of helicopters. And it's just that attitude of if you're going to be in a uniform and be packing heat, you better respect it. But see, government is kind of ganged up now to not respect that. Well, you're not going to be respected like our Mexican police respected. Our North Korean police respected. No, they're not. In Spain, they don't respect the police anymore. They were respectable in times past. More and more in Germany, they're not respected because they act like a bunch of thugs. In Russia, they're not respected. In fact, most places, everybody knows the police are crooks in uniforms. And, you know, if you're a good cop in those departments, you're out of the force or you're a joke. You're compartmentalized and they laugh at you because you won't take the hookers and the money and all the rest of it. And believe me, folks, just in my life, the things I've run into in Dallas and Los Angeles, in New York, the parties I've been at, the things I've seen, And I'm sure you've seen it too. I mean, it's the police delivering the drugs to the party. It's the police running the hookers. And again, I'm at places that aren't even, party places, and I'm like, I'm getting out of here. And I've run into this throughout my life. Stop being naive. Government is dangerous. You better keep it small. You better keep it under control, or it will eat your lunch. You keep it on a leash, or it'll put you on one. That's an Alex Jones quote right there. You keep government on a short leash, or it's going to put you on one. They're officials. They're authorities. They fly on Air Force Ones. They've got the red carpet. They're kings. Government is kings. And through that above-the-law power, everyone that works for the government is now a lord. Well, my forebears fought against that, and I'm not going along with it. But newsflash to all the tough guys that are training for this civil war, and it's not Al-Queda pop-up targets now. It's guys with John Deere hats that actually have these, good old boys you're practicing killing. Let me tell you, you better hope the globalist civil war doesn't start. You're scared to death. They've got patrol cops off the streets on motorcycles or foot because of one guy in Southern California, a state of 38 million people. 20-something million of them in Southern California. You start a fight with 160 million gun owners. You let the global social engineers start this, the Bolshevik collectivist. You let them get you into this while they sit back. Do you have any idea what's going to happen if 1% of that if 1% of that 160 million fight back and just go out and go after one person and then disappear, never seen again? That's 1.6 million combatants. Can you do the math? That's as many police there are in this country. Oh, but that's part of the globalist plan. They plan to have patriots engage in a night of the long knives. You don't know what that is, look it up, against you. That was Hitler's purge of the military and police that had helped him come to power, but still did it because they were scared of him or were intimidated into it. And then Hitler had several other purges, and so did Fidel Castro. So did Hugo Chavez, so did Stalin, so did Lenin, so did Mao, so did Pol Pot, so did the leader of the North Vietnamese, Ho Chi Minh. See, I know history. That's why I'm so freaked out right now. I know history. And I know there's a global corporate crime syndicate that's bought off all major governments and mopping up the few little governments they didn't control, playing us off against each other, and they want the patriots and the police and the military to kill each other. And every preparation they've made is for this. And Homeland Security is for this. And now the TV shows are about how this is coming. The dramas show that your wife, your husband, your neighbor, your school teacher, your boss is now being taught, guys that wear Gadsden flag shirts, guys that talk about George Washington, guys that talk about the Second Amendment, guys that talk about the New World Order. Oh, they're really Al-Qaeda. Now, if you're informed, that's ridiculous. But you see, it doesn't matter. They're targeting Joe Dumbo six-pack out there. Sally Soccer Mom, who doesn't know her head from a hole in the ground. Now, again, when we start the next hour, we're going to take about 45 minutes of people that have lost family members to suicide in the military. I know it's hard to talk about, but we need to humanize this situation. We need to focus on this epidemic. That's coming up in the next hour. For most of the next hour, I will spend the last segment on some of the most important info. But let me just give you that number, 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. For families that have lost people to suicide, or if you're in the military and you've lost a friend, I should add that. I meant to add that at the start of the broadcast. If you had a buddy who committed suicide, what led to that? What do you think caused that? Why is it epidemic? We should be talking about this. Like, why is breast cancer epidemic? Almost 3,000 percentage points what it was in the 50s. Here in the United States, we lead the world. Why is breast cancer epidemic? I know why. It's estrogen mimickers and the plastics in the food. The studies are out there, but it's never on the news. That's why girls are having babies at 8 years old, going to puberty at 3 years old now. Puberty average was 14 years old, and back in the 50s, now it's about 10. 3-year-olds are going into puberty now. Don't believe me, just type it into a search engine. 8-year-olds are having babies. 7-year-olds are having babies. Women are hyper-feminized. The plastics make the men become feminized. I mean, I know the reason, but see, should it be find a cure to breast cancer or find out why it's happening? If you had like 1,000 people a day getting hacked up with machetes, you want to know who's doing this, not let's find a cure to machete hacks. You know, it's the same thing. So we're going to be talking about that. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.